Hello and welcome to the Sunday Recap Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Talking about all the Sunday action. Saw some people calling it Bizarro Sunday. We see all these things. Lions hadn't won in Green Bay in probably your lifetime, most of my lifetime, a lot of people's lifetimes. And then we've got some other interesting ones as well. But starting off with the Lions at the Packers, this one was absolutely beyond stunning, really, because as I know, you've got some family members that are Lions fans. My wife's a Lions fan. It was one of those, that's cute that you're a fan. Let's see how bad the Packers pummel this team here. And really, I just don't understand it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers looked great at times. He looked awful at times. And the Lions defense looked like what they used to look like when they actually had good players on it. It was weird.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching bits and pieces of this game, kept flipping back and forth, and actually I put, for the first time in 24 years, the Lions hadn't won in Lambeau before, but I'm pretty sure no one would even know the difference if they read this article. They just figured that was the case anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, this was an ugly game. I mean, we were talking earlier, if you probably played against great matchups this week, your team's probably tanked because, I mean, no one really paid off if they had a top 5 matchup this week, and that was including the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, it was really strange, but in true Lions fashion, I was getting on an airplane yesterday as they scored the touchdown. I didn't see whether or not they got the 2-point conversion or anything. I look later, see the final score, assume that they just didn't get the conversion, the game was over. But in true Lions fashion, they had to fumble the onside kick and allow a field goal attempt, which I saw everyone tweeting out vines of it saying a missed kick. It wasn't a missed kick. I mean, it got blocked and it wasn't even close. So
yeah.
Either way, it's just so Detroit of them to let it come down to a final second. It was insane. A really ugly game here. Cowboys and the Buccaneers. Really, there was nothing to see here. We saw, like you mentioned, Des Bryant, Mike Evans, Cole Beasley, point chasers. Mike Evans was the only player really to be relevant here. I mean, Doug Martin had an okay game, but ultimately, he didn't pay off his salary. He had a Darren McFadden type of game where good for you for getting yards, but if you don't score touchdowns, you're dead to me kind of thing. And I mean, it was 10-6. So you look at the score of this one, you really don't expect you're going to open the box score and see much production.
Yeah, I mean, Winston had a nice little bootleg run for the touchdown there after kind of getting bailed out. I mean, not bailed out, it wasn't penalty, but fumbling the ball down there at the 1. I mean, good for the Bucs. It's kind of fun watching the Cowboys struggle here again. I always enjoy it, but I mean, this game was ugly, another ugly one, the early slates. I mean, I think we all probably whiffed on running backs this week going with Darren McFadden, passing on guys like Langford and West there in Kansas City. So disappointing week if you played the right running backs.
Yeah, and the thing with the Cowboys, as I was looking at it, the only analogy I can really think for this team is with Tony Romo out, they're the Cleveland Browns offense when Josh Gordon was in town before he decided to ruin his career. I mean, the team that you have your number one receiver, and he's kind of going to get his, which hasn't necessarily been the case with Des Bryant so far, but I mean, he's just coming back. But I mean, it's a team that they move the ball, and they don't score touchdowns. And then they don't give up a lot, but they don't win. And it's embarrassing, but it's close. All I can think of is the Cowboys are the new Cleveland Browns until Romo gets back. So send me your hate on that. Prove me wrong, but that's what they look like to me right now.
Yeah, next week Romo's back, so these guys will be much more relevant going forward.
You can get him out of the IR in every season-long fantasy team that I have because he's on every single one of them. Panthers and the Titans here. Cam Newton was a guy that I liked a lot. I ended up catching him. He's just the guy that you just know he's going to get you a rushing touchdown, seemingly. He's going to get you 200-plus yards, probably passing touchdown. A great floor. Maybe you're overpaying a little bit for the floor, but in those games where he has the big ceiling, he's certainly worth it. And, I mean, he looked good. He was really efficient, 21-26 here. And the Titans' secondary just, once again, just didn't look good. And Cam Newton didn't need to have elite weapons because, I mean, some of the throws he made, we saw out routes on the opposite side of the field. And, I mean, it's incredible the kind of arm strength this guy has.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's just a phenomenal athlete. And I don't really understand all the hatred, I guess you could say, towards Cam Newton. I mean, there's some people who just generally don't think he's a good football player. And I'm just trying to figure out why or what game they're watching because, I mean, the guy's phenomenal.
They probably aren't watching.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Watching the box scores.
I mean, Tennessee's defense looked pretty bad again. I think when Jonathan Stewart goes for 91 yards and a touchdown, not to say Tennessee has a great rushing defense, but they're not bad either. I was a little shocked about that one.
Yeah, I mean, it was another one of those games where Cam Newton was the play. I mean, Stewart was an okay value. That's just about
Yeah.
it. Other side of the field, if you chased Marcus Mariota, this was not the spot to do it, and you should have known better. Panthers, one of the better defenses in the league, and point wise, as far as fantasy goes, they weren't a great defense, but they still made the plays they needed to make. And I mean, this game was, I guess, closer a little bit in the score than it really looked like on the field to me.
Yeah.
Bears and Rams here. Rams, one of the better defenses in the league, get after the quarterback well, and Jay Cutler dominated. 37 points in this one, 258 and 3 touchdowns. Zach Miller with his big line, which was very skewed by his, I think it was an 87-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
He caught catch and run, which if you thought at the beginning of the week that Zach Miller was the guy that's going to get you 107 yards on 2 touchdowns, and it wasn't a volume play, it was a catch and run, just no one touched him kind of thing, then I would say you cheated in knowing that with that 87-yard touchdown, because he will never again have an 87-yard touchdown. But if you played him as a punt play, good for you. He was a hell of a play. And 100% of the time I wouldn't have played him in this spot. But I mean, it paid off, and the Rams defense looked really bad in this one. I mean, it seemed like every play, every highlight. I was watching Red Zone at the airport, and I'm seeing every highlight was screen pass from the Bears, touchdown. Short pass from the Bears, 80-yard touchdown. And as someone who had no Jeremy Langford, I was trying to find the closest bar to my seat there, because it was not pretty. If you played Langford, he wasn't high owned, but had a hell of a week.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the outside last week, but of course, 2 different matchups. I mean, coming from San Diego to St. Louis, in St. Louis, where the Rams defense has been very good this season. I mean, the guy, he rushed for 73 yards. He was a high volume, carry guy there. And Cutler's been looking for him in the passing game. And I think once Matt Forte comes back, which should be shortly, I mean, you have to see Langford getting more touches and involved in this offense. So I kind of think you downgrade Forte for the rest of the season. He's not going to be that high volume guy.
Yeah, and I mean, this is probably going to be his last season in Chicago anyway. So you got to think maybe the Bears, who aren't necessarily going anywhere this season anyway, maybe get Langford kind of more acquainted with the offense. And like I said, he looked really good. So can't wait to see the overreaction with him next few games. Whether Forte is in or out, we'll see there. But either way, I mean, he looked good. So I certainly don't blame you if you're going that route. Saints and Redskins, Kirk Cousins, and you see the narrative after the game. You feel great for the guy because his dad, apparently battling cancer, goes and gives him the game ball. It's one of the few like good moments. You see all these bad moments. You got guys punching Jeremy Maclin in the head, all these idiot plays on the field, and then you see things like that. And if you had Kirk Cousins, you feel great about it. You feel great about that either way, even if you didn't. But things like that makes you want to cheer for a guy like Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. I mean, you got to like it. I mean, it's becoming much more likable. I kind of am rooting for the Redskins to pull it off here. I don't know why, but I think it is just solely Kirk Cousins. You want him to keep feeding us. You like that Vines and get into the playoffs. It's been great. And if you're looking for a cash game quarterback or just a quarterback anyway for the rest of the season, just play who's ever playing New Orleans. I mean, they're on a bye next week, so coming back after that week, fire up whoever that is, because they're awful. I mean, truly awful.
I mean, and Rob Ryan got fired, but it doesn't matter. I mean, anyone who's followed the NFL for years, which most people who are watching this at least have in some regard, you've known for this entire time the Saints were terrible, and I've stuck to the fact that the only reason this guy kept his job is because his last name's Ryan, and he looks like the kind of guy that would be a great defensive coordinator. He's got the full look, the Jesus hair, the great gray beard. He's got everything, but other than knowing anything seemingly about defense, I mean, maybe he needs to hit up his brother Rex and see if he can get some tips, because I mean, it's been a train wreck there for the last couple of years, and I'm kind of sad to see him go, but can't imagine there's going to be any overnight changes that make this all of a sudden a productive unit. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that team and they couldn't tackle, they couldn't do anything. I mean, you saw Browner. I don't know if you saw the highlight on the screen pass of him just looking to hit someone and not even go after the runner. So it was pretty comical.
Yeah, no, it was rough. On the other side of this one, Brandon Cooks, Drew Brees early, 2 touchdowns. Late, game was over. They did nothing. So if you had Brandon Cooks, I had some shares, but I'm not going to lie and say to you that he was in the right combination. But I did see him on a lot of the big winning lineups because fairly low-owned guy. And he's on a nice little stretch right now under the radar. So definitely got to look at moving forward. Dolphins and Eagles next. Sam Bradford left the game with an injury. I'm sure everyone was stunned by that. Mark Sanchez came in, threw a key interception. Everyone was also stunned by that. So, and then also DeMarco Murray, productive game, only to have his touchdown stolen by Ryan Matthews, who got consecutive goal line carries until he got in. A little frustrating for those of us who had DeMarco Murray. Jordan Matthews went back to his old self. We thought he had kind of turned a corner last week. He was a guy that I reluctantly slotted into way too many lineups, and all he did was disappoint again. So I feel like I've said this way too many times, but Jordan Matthews is once again dead to me. I mean, that much talent, and he just can't get it done. I just don't understand it.
I mean, well, it doesn't help that Bradford can only throw the ball 3 yards at a time. But, doesn't help. But when Brent Selleck and Zach Ertz are leading receivers, I mean, you can kind of expect this is the week to go. Well, I mean, we're not surprised by any of this. I mean, we've seen it way too many times this season, and they really are the ultimate boomer bust team. If Matthews is out with a concussion, I don't know what his status will be for next week. I mean, you got to look at Murray as being one of the elite plays.
Yep.
So, I mean, hopefully Sproles doesn't come in and get a goal line touchdown, because it could happen. You never know with this team.
And Darren Sproles is a god. You know I love Darren Sproles. And Brent Selleck, another one of those big, not speedy targets that had a huge, I think it was a 70-yard catch.
Yep.
I can see things like that, like popping up on my red zone. I'm like, please tell me that was 7. Why is there a highlight for a 7-yard catch? No, 70. But I don't know if anyone played the guy anyway. It didn't really matter. But those are yards that I wanted from my players. But either way, good for Brent Selleck. He got it done. Speaking of not getting it done, but everyone's still talking about how effective he was, it's driving me nuts. Johnny Manziel against the Steelers. Everyone's talking about how, hey, look at what he did. 372 yards and a score, and that's all well and good, but the touchdown was way after it mattered. And you can move the ball Alex Smith-like all you want and, get a couple first downs here and have an overall, good game, but he didn't. I didn't feel like he put the team in a position to succeed, and this is not just all Johnny Manziel hate. He looks much better than he did last year. He looks like he could be a competent quarterback, but I just don't think he's going to be a winning quarterback. He's not the guy. He hasn't made the plays when he's needed to make them. By the time he made any plays that mattered this game, the game was over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can only do so much with the guys around him. I mean, they can't clone Gary Barnidge and put him at all 4 spots, because if they did, they'd be undefeated this season. If it was Manziel and Gary Barnidge.
Just one guy.
That's true. But
he's also Superman.
Yeah.
And maybe Johnny Manziel's Superboy. I don't know.
I mean, he didn't have a bad game, but I mean, you can only do – it's the Browns. You can only do so much with this team.
True.
There's no Big Ben who comes in and plays relief pitcher and then just comes out and tosses 379 yards and 3 touchdowns. I didn't have any Martavis Bryant or Antonio Brown. If you were looking for that BVP with Bryant and Landry there, because they had a nice couple connections – you really lucked out. I'm sorry. I was not mad at all.
Yeah, all the big teams, it seems like all the big winners at the moment at least had I think it's the team that's winning the DK million right now. Had Martavis Bryant and Antonio Brown, but neither Jones or Roethlisberger. Obviously, he wouldn't have played Roethlisberger because he wasn't starting anyway. But paired both those guys without Landry Jones, which was interesting. Yeah. So definitely worked out if you were picking on that Browns defense, which, as we know, has been awful. D'Angelo Williams was the chalk. I thought the most obvious play at any position. I think anyone who says that they didn't think that either wasn't paying attention or is kind of fooling themselves. But he was a disappointment, but I'm not going to be afraid of him. The guys look great all season. It just didn't work out this time. Ben was just throwing the ball down the field at ease. I mean, it was just he wasn't seeing any pressure. Everything was open down the field. Obviously, no Joe Hayden, but I don't know how much that even hurt him because he's been terrible this year too. So, Browns and Saints, go ahead and just play whoever against that defense because it's just terrible. Jags and Ravens. This one, it was a battle of two teams that just neither one of these teams seemed to want to win, even when they have the opportunity to win. And in true, I'll say true Browns fashion, because the Ravens are technically the Browns. In true Browns fashion, the Ravens had the game won, and then a late penalty gave it away. I'm happy for the Jags. I like this young team. I like a lot of these players on it. And, I mean, I don't feel bad for Joe Flacco. He's so – I think he's arrogant. He's had his moment. Let someone else have it. I have no sympathy for the Ravens as bad as they are. But, I mean, they also don't have any weapons on offense now. With Steve Smith out, it's Kamar Aiken and Crockett Gilmore. I mean, what's the guy supposed to do with these type of performances? And he wasn't bad, but, Jags pulled out a, I guess, fortunate victory in this one.
Yeah, because the Jags didn't look good either. And this was another one of those, we were all looking at Bortles, Hearns, and Robinson for the big day. And, they both had a touchdown, which was nice, but they didn't hit that ceiling that we wanted them to. And just another one of those weeks where you play all the right matchups and none of them pay off. I mean, back to the Baltimore side, can we get Justin Forsett involved? I mean, honestly, he's probably your best playmaker right now, and
Easily.
still no touches.
Yeah.
14 targets. Sorry, 14 carries there, and only had 4 catches for not much at
You
all.
probably should have 14 targets in that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I mean it's a mess. Ravens are going nowhere. It's I think it's going to be a situation coming very, very soon that let's see what young guys we have and what they can do, because there's nothing going on there. It's rough. I think they overtook the Lions actually now as a top draft pick. So have fun with that. It's almost like foreshadowing. The Browns moved to Baltimore. You knew they'd get number 1 pick eventually. So there's your number 1 pick. Vikings and Raiders here. The Vikings are 7-2, and as someone who's not a Vikings fan, I'm a DFS player, obviously NFL fan, of course, as well. But you don't pay attention to things like this unless you're, a Vikings or a Packers fan and you're worried about this. But Vikings are quietly one of the better teams in football this year. And Adrian Peterson, everyone seems to always be disappointed in the guy because he's just been good and not great. But keep in mind, the guy's 30, and he goes for 203 yards and a touchdown in this game. And, of course, that 80-yard touchdown late. But this is it's a good team, and it's surprising because you're looking at weapons like we're talking about the Browns and the Ravens. Vikings have Stephon Diggs, and you've got Adrian Peterson, and that's it. And they're still just winning games.
Yeah. I mean, you got to look at the Minnesota defense. I think, looking at the rankings and going through matchups each week, they look fairly average, but I think they are better than advertised. It's kind of what we've seen. And that's something that the Browns and Ravens don't have. They don't have defense at all. But, I mean, if you can hand the ball off 25 times to Peterson and just play defense and let Bridgewater make the throws he needs to throws, I mean, you're going to win 10 games each season, at that rate. And that's going to be the thing. I think this week you saw what their offense is going to be for the rest of the season. Granted, the games go this way each time, and I think that kind of limits guys like Diggs, who's had a nice couple stretches here before the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it seems like Bridgewater's in that Alex Smith role where they're saying, look, go out here and manage the game. We don't need you to make the plays to win the game. And they haven't really needed him to make those plays late in games recently. Yeah. Blair Walsh has been that guy. He's the new Matt Prater. Like he's the MVP. But they've sneaky been good. All of a sudden, Packers struggling. If the Vikings end up winning that division, I mean that would be a stunner right there for everyone. So.
Vikings Redskins NFC Championship.
Yeah, just imagine that. I mean, 2 weeks ago you couldn't see that. Now all of a sudden, I mean it's not even that far fetched. Honestly, we'll see. I mean that's a bold prediction. We'll have to see what kind of odds we can find on something like that. Next up, Patriots and Giants. Probably the game of the week here. Patriots losing Julian Edelman now maybe for the season. So that's upsetting for my season-long fantasy teams. But as an NFL fan of a team that's trying to chase the Patriots, I don't feel bad for the Patriots. I'm sure they'll just find some guy who's working at Wendy's this week, have him in. He's going to catch 115 yards and 2 scores next week because that's just what they do. They just take average players and make them great. Their great player was great, though, here in this one. You saw Brady was very good. Gronkowski obviously did what he did. His longest catch of his career, 76 yards, which was surprising to me, I guess, that he hadn't had a catch like that yet. But still seeing all these articles talking about the Patriots. It's just destiny that they're going to win the Super Bowl. But I mean, Giants are a good team, but they're not. It wasn't an impressive win. Like, it was a good win. It was a good team win. But I wasn't like blown away by the Patriots here.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they're going to struggle with certain matchups. But I mean, it's New England. They're going to get the hype all the time. I mean, I guess they kind of deserve it. 4 Super Bowls in the last X amount of years. I hate them. I hate the Patriots. Colts fan, I can't stand them. So
yeah.
I don't even want to talk about them, to be honest.
You got to give the Giants credit in this one. We'll talk about that then. I mean, Tom Coughlin, regardless of how good his team is, which granted he's had a good team each of the times that he's played them, but I mean, this is a Giants team that's been slightly above average. They're not a great team. They haven't been a great team. They're a terrible defense for much of the season. But, I mean, he's just a great coach. Goes from the guy who, 6-7 years ago, they're talking about firing him, goes and wins a couple Super Bowls, and he just gets up for big games. Eli Manning played well. And really the guy making the big mistake was Brady, throwing that interception in the end zone late in the fourth. Ended up getting bailed out by his kicker, which has happened many times now recently. But, I mean, he still made the plays he needed to make. And, I mean, he's just been good. And Odell Beckham, long touchdown, nothing else after that. I guess we can stop talking about the Patriots because you can go anywhere and hear about the Patriots. It doesn't need to be here. Chiefs and Broncos, this one here. And there was a great tweet by the fake ESPN earlier talking about how Peyton Manning broke Brett Favre's record, decided, hey, what the hell, let's go for some other records. Throws 4 picks on 5 completions. All of a sudden, everyone's saying, well, we knew this was coming. His plantar fasciitis, there was no indication that he just was unable to move at all. I mean, questionable, yes, they said, dealing with some injuries, but anyone who's saying now, oh, hey, I knew this, he was going to be terrible, give me a break. In this matchup, no one saw this coming. And, I mean, it looks like a concern. I mean, it's possible. We haven't really seen many reports today, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Peyton Manning miss some time now.
Yeah, I mean, this is an injury where you just need to stay off of it for it to heal at all. I mean, there's no way he can play through this. I mean, we saw him at the worst I've ever seen him. I mean, that was bad last night. And for someone who had a Broncos stack, clearly one of the worst moves I've ever made, one of the worst lineups I've ever seen. If you just go to my history and then if you sort through scores, that one's all the way down at the bottom.
They put an extra 0 next to winnings. It doesn't say 0. It says 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It's just pointing, and it's got the Nelson from South Park with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a great matchup, and really, Osweiler came in. He was okay because it is a good matchup still, but of course, just trolling everyone. Osweiler to Andre Caldwell late for the touchdown. Everyone loved that. But no garbage time for anyone. Demarius got a couple catches late, but I mean, it was easily more a product of the Broncos being terrible than it was the Chiefs being good. Chiefs were good enough. They made the right plays, but I mean, I still don't think it was a great performance by them. It's just that Broncos offense and Manning were just so bad.
Yeah, because you look, Cairo Santos hit 5 of 6 field goals. I mean, and capitalized on every field. I know.
Yeah.
And you look at Charkandrick West, another value running back who probably no one was on because of the matchup. You look at these two value backs and against the Broncos and the Rams, both on the road. I mean, you're probably not touching them 9.5 out of 10 times, maybe even 10, and they both pay off. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's a surprise that it was this bad, but it's not a surprise that the offense struggled, I guess, to some extent, because this has been one of the worst offenses. It's been very concentrated value, but been one of the worst offenses in football, which is still to this day. Like, I don't care what happens the rest of the season. I'm still surprised with all that talent how bad they've been.
Yeah.
Speaking of bad, Seattle Seahawks in big trouble now. This was I don't know if it might be a little early for must win, but sitting 2 games behind the Cardinals at home in this game, this was a game you needed to win to at least get some confidence moving forward, close that gap. Now they're sitting 3 games back, losing the tiebreaker. If you anticipated 71 points in this game, then you're a liar, because no one in the world thought this game was going to be 39-32. Cardinals going for 2 like all the time in this game, almost killed themselves with it. Ended up panning out in the end with a late touchdown. But Carson Palmer, I still, as a Bengals fan, hate the guy, but you got to respect the game he's playing this year. The guy's been phenomenal all year long.
Yeah. I mean, I think coming into Seattle is still a tough matchup. I think their defense is actually very average. And still, if you want to attack in tournaments, I think it's one of the great GPP moves because they're going to be low owned, just because they still hold that title of being a great defense, being in Seattle, that home field advantage. But if you went with guys like Michael Floyd and Fitz, because the secondary hasn't been great, it definitely paid off this week.
Yeah, they needed that 12th man to be actually a player on the field this week. This is the situation with them. Like, hey, biggest 12th man out there, come play cornerback for us. We need some help against Palmer. But Cardinals, it's hard to argue with them being the best team in the NFC right now. I mean, they look good. Their defense, I mean, wasn't great in this game. Really their only weakness with the defense is they don't get after the quarterback well. But, I mean, as good as that offense has been in seemingly every matchup, they're going to be a tough out in that all of a sudden NFC that just really looks terrible. I mean, all of a sudden, beginning of the season, we're talking about Seahawks and the Packers, and, I mean, people talking about the Cowboys. Obviously, their injuries kind of changed everything. But Cardinals, I don't think you can argue with them being the best team. You can't really say the Packers are. They've looked terrible the last couple weeks. So.
Yeah, I just think there are more – I mean, it's so hard because Carolina's right there too, 9-0. So, but definitely, I mean, Cardinals and Panthers probably the 2 top teams.
Yeah,
I mean, NFC for sure.
I'm hoping we see that Cardinals Panthers in the playoffs because that'd be
a good one.
That's going to be a fun game to watch. But either way, plenty of time before all that happens. But you got to think both those teams essentially locked into their playoff spots. That's just going to happen. So either way, that's going to wrap it up for the Sunday recap. Make sure you enjoy my Bengals beating Brian Hoyer tonight. But outside of that, find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out the rest of our content at dailyfantasycafe.com.